Every set happens facing the mirror, not glancing at it, facing it. Eyes on themselves from the first rep to the last. Between sets, they are still watching. Walking past the mirror on the way to get water, they check, not the form, something else. Most people see this and reach for the obvious explanation: vanity. The gym mirror is practically the universal symbol for narcissism and fitness culture, but that is a surface reading. And the actual psychology here is more layered, more honest, and considerably more worth examining. Because there are at least three completely different people who always train with a mirror. They look identical from across the gym floor. But what the mirror is doing to each of them is entirely different. The first person is using a legitimate tool. The second is managing something that runs beneath the surface of every session. And the third is doing something that looks like confidence, but is actually one of the more precise expressions of insecurity that the gym produces. Let us start with the legitimate case. Because the mirror, used correctly, is a genuine instrument for skill development. When you are learning a movement pattern, visual feedback closes the gap between what your body thinks it is doing and what it is actually doing. The squat you believe is upright may be collapsing forward. The press you feel is symmetrical may be visibly lopsided. For someone developing technical proficiency, the mirror provides real-time corrective information that would otherwise require a coach or video review. Used this way, it serves a clear and valid purpose. Research from the Australian Institute of Sport, published in PLOS One, examined how mirror training affects both single-joint and multi-joint exercises. The study compared mirror training to conditions involving internal focus and external focus instructions. External focus, directing attention outward to the effect of the movement, produced significantly superior force output compared to all other conditions. The mirror condition fell between external focus and the neutral condition on performance measures. What this means practically is that the mirror, when used thoughtfully, can support an external attentional focus, watching form from the outside rather than focusing internally on individual muscle contractions. Used this way, it is a genuine performance tool. But here is where the story begins to split. Because there is a second way to use a mirror in the gym that looks identical from the outside, but produces completely different psychological outcomes. For a specific group of gym goers, particularly those who carry elevated anxiety about how their body appears to others, the mirror is not a form tool. It is a monitoring device, a constant check to see whether what is being seen is acceptable. Research on self-objectification, the psychological process by which a person comes to view their own body primarily as an object to be evaluated from the outside, found consistent evidence that mirrored gym environments amplify this process. A study by Martin Genus, Jung, and Gavin found that sedentary women who exercised in front of mirrors reported more negative feeling states during and after the session than those who exercised without mirrors, even controlling for other variables. A broader investigation by Pritchard and Tigman found that exercising in mirrored environments increased body image concern and self-objectification in women, particularly those who trained for appearance-related reasons rather than health or performance. The mechanism is specific and worth understanding. When you watch yourself exercise in a mirror, you shift from experiencing the movement to observing it. You leave the inside of your body and move to a position outside it, the imagined perspective of someone watching you from across the room. That shift does not always happen consciously, but once it happens, the training changes. Every set is no longer just a physical effort. It is a performance being evaluated in real time by the person performing it, and self-evaluation during exercise has measurable psychological costs. Research found that when women engaged in self-surveillance during exercise, body shame, appearance anxiety, and body dissatisfaction all increased, even when the exercise itself was going well. The person using the mirror as a monitoring device is not vain. They are anxious. The constant checking is not confidence expressed outward. It is insecurity managed inward through an endless, unsatisfying loop of evaluation. Because the mirror never tells them what they actually need to hear, it only shows them what is there. And what is there is always measured against an ideal that lives somewhere else, in their imagination, in someone else's body, in a version of themselves that the training is supposed to be producing but has not quite arrived yet. Research on body image in fitness center environments found that the more frequently certain participants visited the gym, the more negatively they felt about their bodies. The mirror was central to this effect. The gym should, in principle, make the relationship with the body better over time, more capable, more confident, more present. But for the person using the mirror to surveil rather than to learn, the opposite can happen. The proximity to their own reflection intensifies the gap between where they are and where they think they should be. Now, let us talk about the third type, because this one is the most interesting and the least examined. There is a person who trains with the mirror not from anxiety, but from something that functions more like validation seeking. The mirror is not a form tool. It is not a checking mechanism. It is an audience. Research on gym culture and masculine identity found that a significant portion of male gym-goers relate to the mirror as a social surface, a way of confirming that the physical development being produced is reading correctly to the imagined observer outside the glass. This person does not use the mirror during the set to correct form. They use it between sets to assess the result, the pump, the definition, the way the shirt falls or does not fall. They are checking not what they are doing, but what they have become. In the framework of objectification theory, developed by Fredrickson and Roberts, this is a form of habitual self-objectification, treating the body primarily as a physical object to be viewed and evaluated rather than as an instrument for experiencing and acting in the world. Self-objectification, when it becomes a habitual mode rather than a passing state, is consistently linked in the research to increased body dissatisfaction, appearance anxiety, and reduced intrinsic motivation for exercise over time. In other words, the person who trains for the mirror rather than for what the body can do tends to develop an increasingly complicated relationship with their own reflection. The bar for what the mirror should show keeps rising. The gap between the current image and the ideal image stays approximately constant regardless of progress, because the goal keeps moving. You get leaner, and the goal becomes more defined. You get bigger, and the goal becomes bigger. The mirror is never a destination. It is a moving horizon. And here is the paradox that makes this worth sitting with. The person who trains for the mirror is doing the work. The physical effort is real. The consistency in many cases is impressive. They show up. They push. But the psychological return on that work is being systematically reduced by the lens through which the work is evaluated, because the mirror returns an image. And an image, no matter how developed the body behind it becomes, is not the same thing as a felt experience of physical capability. Research consistently shows that people who exercise for health, function, and intrinsic enjoyment develop more positive body image and psychological well-being over time than those who exercise primarily for appearance. The outcomes look similar from the outside. The internal experience is profoundly different. The person training for function feels what the body can do. The squat feels powerful. The deadlift feels strong. The sprint feels fast. These are felt, internal experiences that belong entirely to the person doing them. The person training for the mirror is always partially outside themselves. The experience of the movement is filtered through the appearance of the movement. And that filter extracts something from the training that no amount of physical progress can restore. Now, here's what is worth naming about who most often falls into each of these patterns, because none of this is random. The person who uses the mirror as a legitimate form tool tends to have a functional relationship with their body. They care about what it can do. The reflection is information, not verdict. The person who uses the mirror to manage anxiety about how they appear tends to carry that anxiety into every environment where their body is visible. The gym is not where it started. It is where it becomes most concentrated. And the person who uses the mirror as an audience tends to be someone whose sense of self-worth is significantly tied to external appearance. Someone who learned, somewhere along the way, that how they look is the most legible thing about them. That lesson, like most important psychological lessons, was probably not taught deliberately. It was absorbed from a parent who commented on bodies, from a peer group that organized social value around appearance, from a culture that relentlessly reinforces the idea that looking a certain way is a moral achievement. None of this makes the behavior weak or wrong. It makes it understandable, and it makes the mirror worth looking at honestly. Not the one on the gym wall, but the psychological one behind it. Because the mirror in the gym is reflecting more than a physique. It is reflecting a set of beliefs about what the body is for, what it means, and what it owes the person living inside it. For the person using it as a tool, it reflects competence. For the person using it as a monitor, it reflects a gap that never quite closes. For the person using it as an audience, it reflects something that requires constant reassurance and never quite provides enough. Research in sports psychology has consistently found that training environments oriented around internal experience, how the movement feels, what the body is capable of, how strength and capacity grow over time, produce better long-term psychological outcomes than environments oriented around external appearance. Gyms are almost entirely designed around external orientation. The mirrors cover every wall. The culture rewards aesthetics. The language around training is saturated with appearance-based goals. The person who consistently trains with the mirror is swimming fully in that current. And the question worth asking is whether the current is taking them where they actually want to go, or whether it is simply taking them to more mirror. Because the gym can be two completely different places depending on the relationship you bring to your own reflection. It can be a place where you develop a deepening relationship with what your body is capable of, where progress is felt before it is seen, where the feedback loop runs through sensation, strength, and capability rather than through the image in the glass. Or it can be a place where you stand slightly outside yourself for every session, watching, evaluating, adjusting. Checking the gap between the body you have and the body the mirror is supposed to eventually return. Both people are training hard. Both are putting in the work. But over years, the psychological accumulation of those two relationships with the body is very different. The mirror is a tool. Like all tools, its value depends entirely on what it is being used for. Used to check form, it serves the training. Used to check whether you are good enough, it serves the insecurity. Used to confirm that you are being seen correctly, it serves the performance. And only one of those uses builds anything that lasts. The most genuinely developed people in any serious training environment share a quality that has nothing to do with how impressive they look in the mirror. They are entirely inside their own training. They feel the movement. They track what their body can do today that it could not do last month. Their relationship with progress is internal, cumulative, and unmediated by the glass. The mirror, when they use it, is a tool. They pick it up and put it down. It does not follow them between sets or into the rest of the session or out through the gym door. That is a specific psychological orientation toward the body, one that takes years to build, one that the mirror, used as anything other than a tool, actively works against. The reflection will always be there. The question is whether you are looking at it or through it, and whether what is on the other side of the glass is something the training is building, or something the training will never be enough to fix. If this made you think about what you are actually looking for when you face the mirror, subscribe and hit the bell for more psychology that goes deeper than the reflection.